Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of the Going Somewhere podcast. Today I'm joined by my friend Dylan Werner. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be here. I think more than excited to be on a podcast. I'm just excited to be hanging out with you.
I know.
Every chance we get to just connect and chat and have a conversation, I really love that. And so this time we just get to do it with a couple of microphones and a camera. But excited to be joining with you.
Let's not call it a camera. It's a phone that functions as a camera.
Well, a phone is everything now.
Yes, that's true.
You know, they even have airplane mode, so you can fly through the sky, I heard.
Yes, that's exactly what that does. It helps you fly. No, I agree. That's actually one of my favorite things about the podcast is like I'm just having conversations with my friends and putting it out there and hoping that some people will listen and take something away from it. But I know, you're somebody that I've known for the last 8 years or so, and just have always been impressed with like the person you are and the character you have, but also it's always just a good time to be around you. And as you may tell today, this is not the normal Going Somewhere setup. We are at Evangel Church in Bismarck. Shout out to Evangel, Pastor Josh, letting us set up a little space. Remy. So my setup is pretty minimal. Like what I do is pretty... I use this little ring light right now, and I went to like Target, and it's called like an influencer kit.
I was just gonna say, all the influencers have the ring light.
Yes, and so I went to Target, and then the gal I was checking out, and she's like, "Oh, you have a little movie star in the making in your home," and I was kind of like, "Yeah, it's me."
You're actually looking at him.
yeah, it's me. The $20 ring light is gonna really project me somewhere, but no. So I appreciate being able to be here today, but we got to know each other. You were in Fargo Moorhead for a little while. So what brought you to Fargo Moorhead and then brought you back to Bismarck, and what are you doing now? I just want to hear.
Yeah, ended up there strictly because of school and didn't really even have a really great reason to choose Fargo Moorhead for myself. All I really cared about most, I think, was getting out of Bismarck because I grew up here and had never really lived anywhere else. And so I think for me, it was the idea of, hey, I want to continue pursuing my education, but also I want to be somewhere new where I can, be a little bit more independent and just kind of start fresh in a way. And so that's what I ended up going to Concordia in Moorhead. And then I had just started actually like coming to Evangel and engaging with some community and developing relationships here right before I left, which I was actually ended up being pretty bummed about because I was like, now I like met all these awesome people and have this great community.
Right.
But I already decided that I'm like going to go somewhere else. And way back when Pastor Josh was our young adults pastor.
Yes.
And so he told me, he's like, all right, well, if you're going to leave and you're going to go to Fargo Moorhead, you at least have to promise me that you're going to go to Chi Alpha. And I was like, yes, I will do that. And so I ended up, I was in Moorhead at Concordia, but always jumped over the river to come to Chi Alpha at NDSU and got into some awesome community there and got to know you a little bit better. So yeah.
When it was always like one of those things that when Dylan came over, it was always like, yes. And you were in Cole's small group, I believe, where you hung out with Cole Shabensky and then I remember like, oh man, this guy's so awesome. And then you're like, I'm going back. Like, no, don't leave me.
Yeah, Cole still gives me a hard time because I was supposed to lead a small group with him the next year, and I was like, hey man, I'm not going to be here.
That's right.
And to this day, he still says that I left him for a girl in Bismarck, which is now my wife,
true?
Kendra.
Yeah, okay.
But
if it's true, it's okay.
I think he exaggerates a little bit. I wasn't just coming for a girl, but she's a great girl.
Yes.
And we just happened to get married. So
amazing. So how long have you guys been married?
Yeah, we are coming up actually at the end of May here on our 5-year anniversary.
Congrats.
Which feels like a big step. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like the first 4 years definitely flew by, but 5 is, I don't know. It's just like a very solid number,
Yeah, it's real now.
Yeah, it's real. So 5 years at the end of May. And a lot's changed with that too, because we have 2 kids now.
Yes.
Our son Maverick just turned 3 in March, and then our daughter Amelia is about like 17 months now.
Okay.
So we're in the thick of parenting and that whole journey, which is a lot and a lot of energy in a 3-year-old. So
what are your kids like? I mean, our two are pretty different in a lot of ways. So is that for you guys, or what are you guys seeing in your kids?
Yeah, they're so different, personality wise, and just, I mean, it's been a totally new experience with both of them. And so, I think there's the idealist in me would want to think once you start parenting, like you have your first kid, you get a little experience under your belt, then you just kind of would know what to expect.
Yeah.
And the next time around, just be way easier, and you definitely learn things. But at the same time, I think at least for us, like our second child, like Millie, is totally different than Mav was. Okay. And so I think that all of the exact same parenting tactics, or just the approach and like learning to parent and raise this child, there's like so much nuance, I think, depending on their personality and who they are. And so Mav has always been, he's lived up to his name, because I think Maverick translates as like wild man. I
feel like, when you name a child like Maverick, you're just inviting a little bit of wild into your life.
Yeah, and it walked right through the door with us when we came back from the hospital. And he's always been like so high energy, always going. And even just developmentally, like all of the physical milestones, like rolling over and crawling and walking and running so early. And I think there's always been this thought of like, you could slow down a little bit. And so he's so high energy, super rambunctious, but also like very kind and super caring, and just seeing that develop in him. He loves being a big brother, and sometimes too much, and his affection turns into like, don't smother your sister, or like, no, you can so much. You can hug her, but don't like wrap your arms around her neck and give her a headlock. So he's amazing. And then Millie is much more calm and has a very different demeanor about her, where she's always been much more chill, probably a little bit lower maintenance, just on the side of, she's not always getting into something, but she has her moments too. Yep. But super smiley, just has a ton of joy in her, even at this like very young age. So
that's awesome.
They're both incredible in all kinds of different ways.
Yeah. Well, we're fast approaching. I mean, from when we're recording this, we're like probably a week away from baby number 3. And people are asking me like, are you guys ready? And we're like, yes and no. We're getting some practical things ready, but I feel like when you have the two, we have 2 high energy kids. So Summit, like when he turned 2, we almost say like a before and after. Like he just like had new energy, and he's very rambunctious and wild man too now. But we're just like, they won't slow down. So adding a third in, good thing I learned how to juggle when I was a kid.
Yeah.
That's how I feel sometimes. But no, it's so fun. Like I think everybody, young adulthood for me is hard to define. And I know you spent some time in a role as a young adult pastor, which I'd love to talk about, or that being part of your covering. But everybody's experience is so different. Everybody is like, it's kind of called a season, but really it's very diverse in experience for everybody.
Totally.
And, for some it's really marked by career, marriage, but there's so much change that's happening like across the board. Change for good, change for the better, change that makes life easier, change that makes life harder. Like when you get a big boy paycheck, or like an adult paycheck, that's like a change for the good. You're like, oh, I don't have to just like scrape the barrel every week to get by. Like this is crazy. But then you have to learn how to manage that. And so it's just like so much happening in such a short amount of time. But what has that experience been for you? Because you obviously, when you came back, you got married pretty early. You started working at the church part-time, all that. So what has that kind of experience been like for you?
Yeah, I think you're totally right. There's so much change that marks young adulthood, and even being specifically in young adult ministry for a season, it is even it feels like a hard demographic to nail down, in the sense that, we like to, in a lot of other areas, we kind of have hard markers of like age or grade, for like kids or youth.
High school, or youth.
Yeah, middle school, high school, and things like that. And then young adulthood, you get there, and, we always said like 18 to 30-ish. But it's so hard because I feel like young adulthood as a season is much more marked by stage of life more than your age, because depending on, all of these different things that can come into play of, career paths and getting married or having kids and growing a family, or not doing that. For a lot of different people, we engage those kind of life markers at very different points in time. And then that just a lot of the time, I think, affects, what your life looks like. Where when I got, married, and then especially once we had kids, that's a whole new level of commitment and demand on your schedule and your time and attention, where all of a sudden it's like, I can't go hang out at my friend's house in his basement until 2 a.m., 5 days out of the week, because I just have like a low commitment level for things, compared to, being responsible in my relationship with my wife, and loving her well to the best of my ability, and trying to raise kids in a God-honoring and life-giving way. Like that just automatically changes your level of margin and kind of capacity for a lot of different things, I think. And then too, with it, you adjust, right? Because there's also not this sense of, I got married or I have kids now and my life is over.
Right.
Which I think
for sure.
Maybe people worry about it sometimes, and it's a drastic change, but you also learn to adjust and say, life hasn't stopped. And so what is our new normal, or what does it kind of look like to now live in this new context or with these new responsibilities, and to try to steward those well. And when I think of all of that transition time, like for me, I feel like it happened very quickly because, Kendra and I got married, and then since that time, like I said, we're coming up on 5 years, but we got married. Initially, before we got married, I think planned on waiting a lot longer to have kids, and then, had that desire in our hearts earlier than expected. And so, now have 2 kids. I think that Kendra and I, between us, we've probably, since we got married, been in like 7, 8, 9 different job roles. Where she had switched and done a few different things, and I've transitioned multiple times in my role here at Evangel at the same church. But just it felt like every single year, like there was something brand new happening, and we bought our first house in there, which was a big step for us. We actually closed on our home, moved all of our stuff in. We slept in our house for one night. Kendra was pregnant with Mav at the time. We slept in our new house for one night, and then she went into labor the next morning. And so it was like, oh my goodness, here we go. It felt like we were 2 completely different people living completely different lives just overnight, all of a sudden, from a young married couple in their apartment together compared to we are now parents and homeowners. And what the heck are we doing? And trying to sort all of that out, I think. So it's just been consistent. Like it feels like we've been in such a long time of change and transition, until I think more recently, it feels like things have probably normalized a little bit. And I think a lot of the time it felt like the question we were asking was like, okay, God, what now, or what's next? And I think you always ask that question. Like you want to be a person who lives with vision and in anticipation for what God is doing in and through your life. But also I think that there was kind of this internal shift in dialogue of, like what's next, or how do we get to the next thing, versus, wow, a lot has changed. and maybe now we're finding a little bit more stability. And so, God, how do we take what you have given us and where we're at and steward that well, and take care of that? And I think that's where, a lot of the things with parenting and how do we steward our children and stewarding finances in a home. And there's a lot there. And so just trying to seek that out and do that well, I think has been a big theme and a big kind of shift through a lot of seasons of transition and change.
Well, I think too, when there's transition and change, when things are moving around you a lot, like you need to have greater stability at the core, and I think, for us, that's been so true in the last 3-4 years. There's been so many things that have changed, but for us, like, to live by a set of core values, to live by a set of things that really are like the bedrock, and obviously starting with Jesus, I think that's something that I like to share with people and young adults, is that there will be a lot of change, and I think it's easy to compare to other people's stages and timelines and all those things. And if we can eliminate some of that comparison, but just recognize, like, the more sturdy the foundation, the more stable the ground, we'll be able to handle those changes. We'll be able to handle the adjustments or the expectations that aren't what we maybe thought they would be. And so, for us, it's like developing a strong filter that we're able to filter decisions through, moves through. I think there was a time for us with just moving. We were in New Jersey for a while, and there came a point where we had to elevate through the filter, like, our family and the stability of our family and the life of our family, and especially with Taylor, too, of just how we were in New Jersey during COVID and all those things. So just having that strong sense of value and filter for your family. Do you guys feel like you have that, like, those values that you kind of filter life through? And if you do, what are some of them?
Yeah, I think that, I don't know that we don't have, like, a defined,
it's not on a poster in your kitchen.
Yeah, like not on a vision board or something like that, I don't think. But I think that it's been there's been a constant development of, what does that look like? Because it can be so easy for family and our relationships together, I think, to get lost in the mix, in the whirlwind of just everything going on in life. And I think, especially for me, in being in pastoral ministry, it's something that I try to be just always cognizant of, because there can be a lot of blurred lines of, like, where does ministry and work begin and end, and how do you have good and healthy boundaries? And the reality too is, like, ministry doesn't end. And I think that so often, the question of, like, balance gets brought up, of, like, how do you balance things well? And I feel like balance is kind of a bit of a myth in a way, or it feels, I don't know, because it feels like as soon as you figure it out, then again, you're like, something changes, and life feels really balanced, and now we're introducing a third child, and so that throws a ton of things off, and so for us, I think it's constantly like, how are we on the same page, and how do we live life together? And for, like, ministry, like, what does it look like to do ministry together versus how do I balance family and ministry? How does our family do ministry? And I think that informs a lot of that. And it's a question that we're still even figuring out in a lot of ways. And again, like, I've been in a new position almost feels like every year. And so it's like, okay, what does this mean for us? And what does it look like? But I think recognizing the reality when you talk about, like, values or what's important to your family, I think there's this recognition that home is the first, missions field, and to recognize that it doesn't really matter how well, we feel like we're doing in ministry, or, how much I'm killing it in my job, if when I go home at the end of the day, my family is not in a place of health, if our family, if our kids are not being loved and discipled and cared for well, if I'm doing that in another setting, in another context, but failing to do that first at home, then I think like we're totally just missing the mark. And so I think always trying to think with the mindset of beginning at home, like, what are the values that we are embodying and living out there, and letting that overflow into all of these other areas, I think is an important thing.
Yeah. Bob Goff has this quote that I have always loved, and it's like, why do we call everything ministry? Let's just call it Tuesday. It's just kind of that
I love that
idea of like, we've put kind of like a terminology, and I think that it's important and it's necessary, but like just that gap between like a person living their life for Christ and then vocationally, or we so oftentimes attach like the job or the place we serve as our ministry, when his thing is just like, what if it's just Tuesday? Like, that's just your life. It's the overflow of what's happening inside of you. And I think, again, that's easier to verbalize than it is to like embody and live out.
Yeah.
But that's kind of something that we've aimed for, is that ministry, quote unquote, would just be the way that we live our life. And I think the closer we get to that, not that it's perfect or not that we figured it out, but the closer we get to just our overflow of our walks with Jesus being life-giving ministry, it's been easier for us to navigate that as a couple, as a family, because, for us, like one of the big things is just, I mean, we have our boundaries, but like open door policy. Like we always say, we eat dinner 7 nights a week. It's no harder to make spaghetti for one other person or 2 other people. So why not just open that? We had somebody over and it was just like chaos in our home. Like Taylor thought I was going to get home from work earlier and I didn't. And so like there was things scattered on the ground. And I think a year or 2 ago, we'd have been like insecure, or we'd have been oh, this ruined the night, or like we'd have been angry at each other. And then we've just kind of said, no, we're just inviting people into the life that already is, not calling it anything else, just calling it friendship, calling it loving people, calling it just doing life with others. And so for us, it's been big. And I think one of those things for us that we've elevated when it comes to values is community, is doing life with other people. And I know that's something that's important to you guys as well. So how does that play into it? And what do you see? I think that's one of the greatest needs for young adults is community. Yeah. And so what do you see in that?
Yeah. I mean, I love what you say there too, because, we've definitely felt that, that pressure, or that feeling too of like, to have people in our home, it needs to like, be all perfect and put together, which is the furthest thing from a reflection of reality, living with a toddler and a 1-year-old. It's like, it just feels stressful to like even try to get to that place. And I actually think there's so much power in being able to invite people into the reality of your life, rather than this kind of preferred picture of, what we want it to look like.
Yeah.
And even though in our own sense of kind of idealism and perspective, there's this thought, right, of like, well, this preferred picture is much better, or, if I was, because we think about it from the perspective of the other person, what are they going to think? Yeah. And what they actually want in reality is not this perfectly put together, magazine home when they show up. But actually what is most drawing and enticing to people, I think, is an authentic view of what your life looks like.
Yes.
Because otherwise, I think if we're trying to present the opposite of that, or something different, eventually, for us, it becomes exhausting to try to maintain that. Or it becomes debilitating to community, because it is like, well, yeah, we can't engage community or relationship if everything is not perfectly put together. And so then what it turns into is just a withdrawal and a removal from it. And like, okay, well, we'll just, we can engage it every once in a blue moon, which I think is not what we want to pursue. And so, yeah, just being able to invite people into, this is the reality of my life. Like, this is what the home of a parent with a toddler looks like. And it sometimes it looks like chaos, but people want authentic community and relationship. And the beauty in that too is that I think when we give ourselves permission to present that authentic picture, it also gives other people permission to be themselves authentically. That
Yes.
I don't have to pretend to be something else, or wow, you really have your stuff together. I better play the part too. And it opens the door for I think an intimacy and relationship that is powerful and real, and that allows people to really experience life and grow together. Is kind of what I think of, that what is the picture that you're presenting?
Yeah. When you also think just when Adam and Eve fell in the garden, they're like, that story has always stood out to me because, of course, God had them leave the garden. Like, they broke that relationship, that limit that God had put for their sake, for their good, and it caused a divide. And that's what sin does, obviously, in our lives. But the thing that always stands out to me is that that's the moment that they realized they were naked. That was the moment that they decided to hide. And, God comes out and says, "Where are you?" And it's not because his GPS was broken. It was just because he wanted them to admit and to acknowledge the distance that was apart. He wanted them to admit. And, it says that that God sewed them together, but they hid themselves and they covered themselves. And I think that's, we project this fake self because we want to, when we're flawed, we oftentimes want to cover that up. But in true, authentic, Christ-centered community, there is no hiding. There is no place to cover. And so to recognize that as quickly as we can, and to be authentic. And that doesn't mean, I think some people can interpret that sometimes as like, I'm a bad guy, but it's just the way I am, but to admit like the flaws, the brokenness, the gap, and the need for Jesus, and then work towards that in community with other people. And that's where like life to the fullest really happens, in my opinion, is when we present our authentic, broken selves to other people and to God. And then together as a group, we pray together. We love each other as is, not trying to project ourselves as somebody else to impress them. That's stress. Like that's how, like, for me, that's stress, to feel like I need to be put together. And we've been there in ministry. Yeah. And that was something that we really had to work through in our ministry journey together. Was Taylor felt like she had to fit a role in like ministry as a pastor's wife. And now we're just at this point of like freedom, and working towards that place even more.
Yeah. And that even makes me think of kind of this topic in conversation. And I can't remember where this is even from, but this idea of, because, I think culturally right now, it's really rare for people to have that, be embedded in a context of real authentic community, where other people and are known by other people beyond just like this surface level. Yeah. And looking at the difference between, I think, so much of what we see right now, or kind of this even picture at times of, like having community or having relationships and friends in life, is this difference in picture between like entertaining and an actual practice of hospitality. Yes. Like a lot of the times what we see, and even like, I think you look at movies and TV shows and stuff, like a lot of what community looks like is entertaining. Like, we're entertaining for the night and having people over, and, we've got hors d'oeuvres and light jazz playing in the background, and it's all very social and
that's how our house is,
and wonderful and fun. Yeah. Like, just a classic Tuesday at the Werner household. It's just Tuesday. It's just life. It's just who we are. We're just,
jazz enthusiasts.
Yes. Yeah. And so this difference between entertaining and hospitality, where when what you're doing is entertaining, what kind of is happening, and I would say a lot of time it's like subconscious, right? Of entertaining, you could say, is that people, the aim of it is almost that people walk away from their time with you or in your house and feel better about you. Like, yeah, oh man, aren't those guys just the best? And I want to be like them. And,
right.
You know, like that people walk away with thinking, wow, I hope their mind is blown by, again, this like preferred picture of, I just hope that they think we're awesome.
Yep.
Versus hospitality, it's totally reverse, where the end goal or what happens is that people walk away feeling better about themselves. It's not, I hope they feel better about us. It's, I hope that someone leaves our house or leaves time and community with us feeling better about themselves, like feeling more full and joyful and at peace. And that it's an aim at, you know, a care for the other and not crafting an image of ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. I think, yeah, like you said, entertainment, and not that it's bad. Like, I think people are designed to, like, to bring in, to make an event feel like, wow, and there's a time and place for it. But yeah, I think it is about the person oftentimes. Mm-hmm. You know, it's about how I look and what they think of me, where, yeah, like you said, hospitality is about the other person. And I think that's it can be a fine line. And I think, like, Taylor and I talk about it too, of like, yeah, it's probably okay for us to put the laundry away, you know?
Yeah.
But like, that can also become a bigger picture, is like, there's a level of like, okay, there are fingerprints along the wall to the bathroom where we have the kids wash their hands.
Yeah.
It's like, let's clean that up, you know? But at the same time, I think it translates to faith journeys too, because not that I put any blame on anybody in my life at all, but I feel like there's a lot of times that spiritual authority, it almost made it look so easy to them. And then it was hard for me, like, to spend time with Jesus and to carve that time out, or to, like, the idea of the quiet time. It sounded so easy and so, like, effortless. And then when it wasn't for me, I was discouraged. I would compare. I would really, like, beat myself up, because I'm like, why can't I hear God speak to me? Why can't I get anything out of the Bible? And then when I have learned, like, no, it's not that way. It's a fight, you know, and that's where God speaks, is when we persevere. It's when God, you know, moves in our life, when we get desperate and all those things. But that wasn't always the picture that was just painted. And I think that's just media in itself and things like that, where nothing can replace community. And I think obviously throughout COVID, we saw that like, time and time again. I mean, we were doing Zoom calls on Sundays just to be together, just to, like, have a group of guys. I know it didn't happen like a ton, but even just to, like, talk about a book and just hang out, pray together, whatever the case was. And I think we've grown sometimes in culture, society, like, content with surface level, content with distance. I think I read something like the average person has, like, 2 what they would call close friends, and, like, a large percentage of people would say they have 0 close friends. Yeah. You know, and that's scary to me. Like, that's scary to me because of what community means, you know, and what it can produce in our lives.
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like that is such a hard thing. Like, you bring up, what I would call, like, supplements to community. Things like, because we live in a world of social media, and, like, we're more connected than ever before, but so many people feel more lonely than ever before. And so it feels like the math doesn't add up. Like, how can we have, all of these social networks? Like, we should be social people and have all this connectedness, and yet feel like, well, I'm all alone, or I have literally no close friends, but a list of, you know, however many 100 or 1,000 friends on Facebook. And I think that it's important to recognize, like, there are things that, like you brought up, I love that we have the option to do a Zoom call as people living in different cities. And at that time, I think, like, different states across we were like, right,
27 hours away, you know?
Yeah. And so, like, I never want to, I feel like it can begin to sound like bashing on social media or whatever.
Right.
And there are these like, I love social media. I love my I love my iPhone. Like the opportunity that those things present to be connected with people and stay in touch, and all of that is like really, really incredible, I think. The problem lies in, I think, that when we take things like that are meant to be supplementary to community and we allow them to become a substitute. And so now it is not just that, I have Facebook and keep up with friends there kind of thing, but it's like that is my source of community.
Yes.
Or like, so there's just a lack outside of these places where, there's actually an authentic embeddedness in relationship with other people that we get to do life alongside.
Yeah.
And we become, I think, really, like you said, or like you brought up, just content with the supplements and substituting them in. And the problem is that they make a really poor substitute because they lack so much of what community is meant to have and meant to embody. And I think that we probably even, I think the sad thing is that we often recognize it, like that I don't think we would say that it's the same thing. But that, we become perhaps content with it because it's just easier. And I think that when you look at a lot of the avenues for, community, or kind of this pseudo community that serves as a stand-in, what's attractive about it is that it requires very little of us.
Yes.
And so it's low commitment. If I'm upset with you or I disagree with you on something, I can just, take you off my news feed or unfriend you or whatever it is, like the unfollow, so that I'm not seeing your stuff, but I don't want you to know that I'm not seeing your stuff.
Right. So if we bump into each other, it's all good,
Yeah. Or like, and so there's that aspect of there's very little required of us. Like we can just kind of engage or disengage at whatever level we'd like. And on top of that, then you get, kind of the echo chamber that's created of everything I'm seeing is kind of just stuff that I agree with. Maybe if I disagree with it, I can just battle it out in the comment section with someone who I'm not really seeing a person and a face that's attached to them. I'm just, seeing a profile on a website that, I don't think I do this. I'm too much of a harmony person, but I think what we have to see is like people will say stuff in a comment section that they would never say in a setting, face to face like this, or sitting down for coffee at a table. It's just like it's crazy what will come out in those moments. But it's this place where I really don't have to sacrifice for the relationships that I'm in, or I don't have to give much of myself, and I can just go and take what I feel like I need, versus I think the reality of authentic community. And for me, I think I'm really thinking in terms of spiritual community and Christian community, that as people following Jesus, we're meant to be rooted and established in that, that in our faith journey, we actually miss so much of what we're supposed to experience in formation and discipleship when we're pursuing that journey outside of community, like outside of that context. Because I think, we've probably all heard people be like, well, do I need to go to church? Like, I don't have to go to church to follow Jesus. And it's like, Jesus is not, he's not, captive in the church building, like this reality that we have access to God wherever we are, that he is with us, that we live as temples of the Holy Spirit, but also this reality that just because we have access to God outside of community does not mean that is supposed to be the primary context in which we grow in our faith, like that we just are off kind of on an island, but that actually we are the body of Christ, that we're in community. And when we're in that space and doing it in a real way, I think that it opens up the door for it's a very different thing, because now it's not just that you come and very little is required of you, and you can kind of do the same thing with like church. Like you can attend and like pop in right after worship starts, and then pop out like right at the close of the message, kind of response time, and kind of get in, get out with low commitment, without really being, you're in church, but you're not embedded in the community of the church. But when we are in, real authentic Christian community together, what then I think is held in that space is actual opportunity and room and space and invitation to practice things like, which this is not the ideal picture that we get of it. Like I think we picture Christian community as, well, we all love Jesus and we should love each other. And so there shouldn't be any conflict, and it should all be really easy, and we just kind of step into it and everyone's best friends. We'll sing Kumbaya around the campfire and that kind of thing. But again, the reality of Christian community is that there are opportunities and invitations into what the Bible tells us as opportunities for forgiving one another, which means we're first going to wrong one another. Yeah. That there's going to be conflict, that there's going to be opportunity to joyfully celebrate with one another, but also bear one another's burdens. Yeah. And there are challenging things that come with an authentic expression of community that fall outside of our ideal picture, or fall outside of what we maybe on the surface think that we desire, but that are actually right at the core of what we need. That we need those things in our formation, that we need those things in our faith walk and in our journey with Jesus, that if we are not in community, we don't even have the opportunity really to practice love. That you cannot love outside of community. And even God himself is love, and we see that God exists even before creation in community as the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And so even in who God is, there's this expression of design for community, that we are designed for community, and that we need those things. And it's those components of, I think, that are difficult yet formative and purifying and rewarding when pursued and engaged, that we totally miss out on when we just settle for the substitutes, Yeah.
That's so good. And I feel like real and authentic community is not easy.
It's not.
And because community, when it's all boiled down, it's love, and that doesn't mean it's always, like you said, kumbaya, but love is slow churned. Love is something that is developed through intentionality, through sacrifice. Like that's really, if you look at the cross as your definition of love and you look at Christ as your definition of love, then you have to look through the lens of the sacrifice and effort and intentionality that was required to produce that. And I think that's the thing, is like at base level, online communication, social media, it's still passing of information. There's so much that's missed in that, and so much that we refrain from in that can only be exchanged face to face. Like I think of this, we had early on in our marriage, we walked through kind of a family thing on Taylor's side. Her mom was sick, and there was some stuff that was really scary for us. And we told some friends, and we got a lot of text messages, and by no means were we like, hey, that was bad. We got a lot of text messages, but then we had to knock on the door, and it was Ryan and Ashley Ham, and they came in, met us at the door with a hug, sat on the couch, cried with Taylor, cried with us, just held us, and we felt so loved. There's been other situations, well, them in particular, but other friends, and that even became me. Like, it's easy for me to send a text of encouragement. It's easy for me to send a text saying, have a great day, or consoling somebody that's going through something difficult. But to actually show up or even call or whatever, obviously just the action of it is, but also just the fact that you did it shows love in a different way. And I think that'll always be more difficult than the alternative. But
yeah.
it's just like eating. It's harder to cook and prepare a healthy like meal with good ingredients than it is to just go to the store or go to Taco Bell and, whatever, but it's better for you. And there's no shortcuts to love. There's no shortcuts to authentic community, yet it doesn't mean that it's not valuable to us. It doesn't mean that it's not good for us. I mean, thinking of working out, like I would love to just, I saw this thing. It was like the ab hancer. It was what it was called. It essentially looked like a can, like the plastic wrap, that has like the Coke cans in it or whatever.
Uh-huh.
And it was just like, you just put that on your body and then you just like press it in and it looks like a 6-pack. And it's like, that's great. I would love that. But you're not actually getting the health benefits from that. Like, it takes intentionality, consistency, showing up when you don't want to, showing up when it's difficult, showing up when it's the last thing you want to do. Yet God puts all that together, and we can never have that shortcut to that.
Yeah, we can't have an ab hancer community or an ab hancer love.
Right, you just can't.
Yeah, I think that's so good. I'm gonna have that image just stuck in my mind.
Have you ever seen it? We'll look at it after. I'll put it up in the video.
I was gonna say, I've seen the ones that are like just like kind of the electrodes that like stick to your muscles, or whatever. And it's like flexing your muscles. It's like working out. It's like not the same thing. You're not gonna get. But yeah, I think that's spot on. I love that. Love is slow churned, you said. And yeah,
it's like my ice cream.
Yeah, just like the ice cream. There's no shortcut. And but yeah, like you said, it's harder. And so to be committed to that more than we are committed to ease of relationship or ease of community, I think is such an important thing. And like even you brought up, you recognize in experiencing that, you recognize the difference. Like you experience that shift and that change to, wow, there's actually like this closeness and this care and this reception of love that is like you just can't get from somewhere else or something else or some other avenue. I love that. Yeah,
I mean, again, at the baseline, love, it's a Bob Goff, but love does. It shows up and it's present, and I think that's the thing that I think especially like our generation and young adults will always have to battle, is the idea that it's easy to kind of play along with the norms, but is it life-giving? Is it what God desires for our lives? Is it producing the life? And I think like I want to be a part of a community that is a lot of fun, and we have a good time, but I also want to be a part of a community that when there's conflict, the natural is to address it face to face. And it's to not harbor those things and to hold on to those things, but to come to the person and have that conversation. Like, it's not just all like, yeah, our community's so great. Like, we just play games all the time, and we prepare meals and show up at houses with meals. And it's like, no, we show up at a house because something was said, something was done that doesn't sit well. I'm going to talk it out with this person with the end goal of love, and like, I remember, when I was in elementary school, our neighbors, their names were the Kramers. And if you walked through their backyard, you shaved off a good, 4 minutes from the walk to school every day. And so we would do that, and we would just kind of walk along our fence on their side, and we would hop this little fence and go through another neighbor's house, and we get to school. Well, one day I came and I walked the normal way, but there was a cop standing in the driveway, and he asked where I lived and all these things. I thought I was going to jail. I was like at that age where I was like, oh my goodness. And he talked about how the grass is being trampled down, the flowers are being destroyed, and like all these things.
Yeah.
And it's like, as much as shortcuts are awesome, you just can't, it's not, somebody's hurting. Something's not in order. Somebody's going to jail. No,
yeah.
But I just think that's the thing, is we have to fight for it. We have to set our hearts and set our minds towards it and desire it and pursue it. lastly, just kind of wrapping that up and wrapping our conversation up. But if there's somebody out there that's maybe like, how do I do it? What would you say? Like, what would your advice be to somebody that's saying like, how do I get started in that and pursuing that?
Yeah. I mean, I think that there are a couple dynamics at play. Like, one, I think that there does need to be that like personal commitment to community, because it's like a double-edged sword in a way. I think, in the church, even there can be times where, so like for me, part of my role as our connections pastor is like I want to help foster and create opportunities for community to happen, in the context of, we call them connect groups, small groups, whatever, to create opportunity for that. And so we're constantly seeking out like, yeah, how can we initiate and engage and like lead the way in creating those opportunities. And we always want to do that to the very best of our ability. And there are also times, I think, where, in whatever context where people can feel like, man, like I don't have community, and, it just feels like there's not opportunity, or, like people, like nobody's approaching me. And so that's why I don't have friends, or I don't have community. And I think that on the one hand, there is also this sense in which if we want to have life-giving community, that we should be committed to being a catalyst for that, and actually being like creating community rather than just waiting for it to fall into our lap. And so I think that can be a challenge when it's like, well, I just don't have community. When's it going to come? And I think that there should be an active participation in, I'm seeking that out and engaging, like, literally talking to people, or reaching out. Hey, you want to grab coffee or get together sometime, or want to come over to my place? And there's an opportunity to be actively engaging that. But that also there is a reality of like, if it can feel really difficult, where do I start, or who do I ask, or what does that look like? And so I think another important thing is just to be like, as you're committed to that, as you seek it out and pursue it, I think you be the friend that you want to have, right? Yeah. Like you be that person to others, and you'll also find that in them, I think. But then it's also important, like, be committed to it in the sense that that you're open and available. I think sometimes we're just, the excuse is that we're too busy for community, and people are busy, and we've all got a lot of things going on. But again, it's like, what is the thing that you're committed to, and what are you prioritizing? And so for some people, it might be that there are actually some other things that need to be put on the back burner, or, changed in the list of priorities to say, these are good things, but maybe they're displacing life-giving community that ultimately, like, if I want to flourish, I can't really live without. Like, I need to pursue that, be open to it, be available. And I love, I think about like people that have been impactful for me, in terms of like being community, or being an authentic friend to me. I just think it's been a lot of people that have been available, that it's people who I think about a time with, when going back to my time, like coming into young adults, experiencing, not doing young adult ministry, but just being a young adult, and walking into this place where it's like, okay, there are a lot of people here. I want community, and I want to be in relationship. And what's that like? How's that going to play out? And I remember Pastor Josh, for me, was a huge part of, like, he totally took me under his wing, and like, sought ways to help me find community. And I remember like one time he just invited me. He said, "Hey, I have to go pick up a Lazy Boy recliner from the furniture store. Do you want to come with me?"
Right. He doesn't need you for that.
Yeah, he doesn't need me for it. It's not like anything spectacular. It is like, it's Tuesday or whatever. It's life. Like, I am living life. and I can invite other people into what is happening, even if it's as mundane as picking up furniture.
Yep.
And as a young adult guy, 18 years old or whatever, who was just like hungry for and desiring community and desiring relationship, I was like, I would love nothing more than to go like, yes, I want to go pick up furniture with you, because again, what's desired is not necessarily this spectacular experience or groundbreaking thing. It is an authentic experience of life with another. And so it can be as easy as taking things that you're already doing or things that are already happening in your life and invite other people into that, like invite people into that space. And I think that what we often find is because we're designed for and have a desire for community, if we just open up doors, like people will walk through them.
Yeah.
People say yes to opportunities, but so often it just feels like there's not an invitation there to begin with. And so be an inviter into community, be an available person, and be open and be committed to it. Again, like when it gets hard, don't disengage or withdraw, but be committed to the reality of community. And I think in doing so, we find a lot of that life, a lot of that growth, a lot of love that we get to give and receive and experience with other people.
Yeah, that's good. I think so much of it's awareness. It's when you give that to other people, they don't realize they have that need because they're just unaware of that need. And I think if you're listening to this is a heads up of just be honest with the need that you have for community and do whatever it takes to pursue that. You know? Question we always ask, if you were to give advice to 20-year-old Dylan, what would it be?
So there's this thing called Bitcoin, and you should buy it. No. Yeah. I think advice to 20-year-old me. That's such a hard question.
Which for you isn't even that long ago,
Yeah, 6 years.
Yeah.
6 years ago. Yeah, I mean, I think so. This is, maybe not directly tied to the community conversation, but at the same time, somewhat, you could say, I think just, be present to the season that you're in. I think just reflecting on young adulthood, like we talked about, there's so much change, there's so much transition. And I think oftentimes in getting caught up in all of that, we can really miss the opportunities to be present to where we're at, and appreciate where we're at and enjoy life. And thank God for it, because we're always looking ahead to the next thing. But the only place that we get to live is right now in the present moment. And I just think, as young adults too, we can place a lot of pressure on ourselves of, trying to make sure that everything, that we're getting everything sorted and getting things right, and we're making big decisions, and a lot of it is like decisions that will change parts of the trajectory of your life, and so that can be stressful for people at times, and it's just, I think it's a weird thing, because looking back now, I think in hindsight, after you walk through that season, you look at yourself and I'd be like, you're not nearly as busy as you think you are. like you have a lot of freedom in life right now. Sure. Like you have a lot of margin and stuff. But like, don't get stressed out, and don't take yourself too seriously, and allow yourself to be present and enjoy where you're at and make the most of it. And through that too, I think that then you experience a lot of those things. You experience community, you experience the relationships that are around you. And you're more present to those things. And so I would just say that, like, be present. Don't take where you're at for granted, because it's not a season that you're in for a long time,
It's good. Dylan, this is great. I always appreciate my conversations with you and just getting to hang out with you. And, you're just such a incredible leader. And I've just seen you grow so much, and it's been fun to kind of from afar almost, you know, I mean, 3 hours isn't that far, but from afar to see what God's done in your life. And, you know, I always think of 1 Timothy 4, it says, don't let anybody look down on you because you're young, but set an example for the believers in life and faith and love and speech and in purity. And I just think you do such a great job of that. Like, you're not intimidated by the fact that you've, from an early age, have been asked to lead people that are much older than you. And I just think you do so with grace. And so it's awesome. I appreciate you and just care a lot about you. You're awesome.
Thanks, man. I also just want to say, because I think a lot of the nature of what we've been talking about and just discussing, you know, which has been so fun. I feel like you are someone who embodies so much of this, you know. I think I have a lot of growth to be had in a lot of these things. And I think about the ways that I've seen you, you know, engage relationship with people. I think that you're one of those opportunity makers, someone who I've seen over and over again, like invite people into relationship and into community. I think that you really do that well. It's one of the things that makes it easy to talk with you, to sit down, and I'm like, I could just do this all day because I could just talk to Steven. And I think that you embody just so much of what we've talked about, and I admire you for that, and I look up to you in that. And so you just love people really well, man. And I'm thankful for, you know, the friendship that we get to have, but also know that there are so many people around you and in life that have benefited from and continue to be recipients of, I think, a love that is slow churned, that's deliberate, that's not taking shortcuts. I really mean that. So, yeah, you're killing it, man.
Well, appreciate that. And thanks for everybody that just got to be a part of that moment. But no, thanks for listening. You know, this podcast has been a journey, and it continues to get better and better for me. So if you're listening, share it with your friends, do what all those things can do to help other people experience this. And we just appreciate you. We'll see you again next week. And again, thanks for being a part of the podcast and being my friend. Love you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Love you.